this. How best can we advise our clients who want to do private placement without too much regulation with CMA? How best can we advise them?
But Mr. Mutiwa, I'm going to stop you.
No, the last ones, UDC fund managers, those ones I really, my question is one for all of you. When can we have a meeting? And I'll more follow up that question after here. Thank
Fantastic. Okay, who is moving the mic? Someone moving the mic. Okay, let's, we have a few comments also from on the net, in the chat here. Let's see, hey, where are we? Yeah. Okay, it would be good to, this is Isaac Mpanga, thank you. It would be good to see private equity players in the corporate rescue space. This space has been largely left to government to play in through UDC, yet it is an important avenue for FDI through private equity funds. Banks and other financial institutions are willing to assign their debts, but off-takers are very few. I think you made that point, both Josh and Alison. Questions? I take your questions, I'll take another.
Ian, I see you couldn't let that opportunity slide. I'll start quickly with the private placement comment. It's not that we want to tap into the private placement space. There is a regulatory provision for notifying. It's not an approval, it's a notification to the authority of prior placement. Now, the motivation behind that provision really, again, is investor protection. And what we want to see is how are you structuring this private placement for purposes of confirming that it does not spill over into the public offer space. If there is need, usually there is no need to make certain recommendations around disclosures that we would like to see you give your investors. That recommendation will be made. But for now, that is the current framework for private placements. It's more of a cautionary safeguard for those investors that may be operating in that space. And what we do on our end is really affirm that you're not crossing over to the public offer space, which would require a prospectus. The issue on liquidity of our market, that is a very long conversation. We can talk till the cows come home, but there are a combination of many factors that I would say. If you look at our there's little movement. That speaks to the depth of the market, but there have been many arguments around what the causes of lack of liquidity in the markets. When you look at our markets, you'll find that a lot of the equity is mopped up by the institutional investors. A key player in our market, for instance, is NSSF, which has more money than it knows what to do with. So if it holds the bulk, and NSSF will usually buy to hold. So you'll not see significant movements in the market when it comes to trade, because the few movements that are happening are retail investors who maybe put in their 5 million. Now it's time for school fees. They want to sell and, pay off an urgent cash need. So again, conversations around competing investment options. You have treasury bonds that are right now at 17.5%. So how can the equity space compete favorably with those numbers? So there are structural issues that need to be addressed from a policy perspective, having a conversation with the government to see how we can actually create a vibrant market. And that's a long-term conversation. Yeah.
Okay, the fund managers, when can you meet? Declare. And there was a bit of a question for you, Damali.
Yes, I had a question. But Capital Markets Authority, let's not make it long term. We are like desperate. Things have to be solved urgently. Like I mentioned that number, that should piss you off, that these $240 million out there that could come to the Ugandan market to help startups, and we are not tapping into it just because of business environment issues, policy issues that we can just with a pen solve. and then be able to attract that amount of money. So we should work urgently, like desperately urgently. There was a question about the issue of our companies, not just money but also business development services. You should be happy to know, actually, because this thing was designed by us, and we know who we are as private sector, is that this fund has two arms, one an investment arm and a business development arm. And the idea is that, these other funds where they come, they do a due diligence on you and then dump you because you didn't meet the due diligence, and then go with the guys who always win the due diligence. So the idea is that the investment arm, once it does a due diligence on a company and the company fails, we already have that report. So that company should be moved to the business development services arm to be helped to then meet those requirements and then be able to either, just survive anyway, can now go to a commercial bank and get other private equity, or it can still get money from the fund. The business development services arm, of course, has to be grant finance because it doesn't make a lot of money. But that's the idea, is that we need to have enough SMEs, high growth potential SMEs at the bottom, growing to become the Mukwanos, to become the next house of plastics. We need to have enough of them. But if we only use this thing where due diligence is done, you didn't pass, goodbye, I'll only go with the ones that passed, it means we'll always have these 10% SMEs that we're helping, and then the private equity, even the investment arm, they start struggling to look for companies to invest in. Actually, one of our biggest problem now is that a lot of companies that we give grant financing to, their SMEs, they start looking sexy to investors. Then investors flock to them and pump a lot of money into them, forgetting the people who are running them are the same people. They haven't evolved to be able to manage these huge sums of money. But also these sums of money, because all the equity investors are now looking at this one company because it's the only one that has come up. We have very few of them that are investable. So that's why now this fund will have both a business development arm and an invest arm, so that we're able to give business development services to those SMEs that always fail the due diligence. There has to be someone picking that slack up to help them, so that tomorrow they're investable, so that tomorrow another person can invest in them, or even now the fund can then invest in them. And that's, I think, critical, is that whatever funds we're running, if someone fails the due diligence, how do you help them so that tomorrow they can pass the due diligence? And sometimes there are simple things that they just have poor systems. They're not that expensive to sort. So we need to be able to do that in anyone in private equity, anyone, even the lawyers, as you're advising other people, this person can sort it out. It can become the Mokwan of tomorrow if we help it with these small things in the meantime.
Only if we stop fighting.
Yes. So very good quote.
Mr. Alex Resida has sent us a message here. Many of the options for distress management are difficult in our economy. Share split, capital markets. What is your assessment of the availability or maturity of players, e.g. venture capital opportunities for equity financing, mezzanine financing? The thriving money lenders space illustrates these limitations. No one should rush to a money lender. I think that should come back to you, Alison. Mr. Resid has put it to you.
Definitely, issues around how investable these companies are has always been a real concern, and I think Damali has also highlighted on the need for BDS services to support these companies to get to where they need to be. Tax issues, governance issues, but you'll realize that a key missing link is actually the cost of these businesses getting ready to where they need to be investable. So you find that an entity needs, for instance, to get a board that is compliant with the market requirements, but the fees that are coming through from the lawyer, the fees that are coming through from, say, maybe the management accountant when it comes to putting their finances in order, they don't make sense. They don't make sense compared to even the capital that they're going to raise. You'll find that at least a 20% chunk is being eaten by this. Yes.
this thing.
Exactly.
So what's the
so it's important to also, I think, both ends, from the private sector, but also, again, for us as a regulator, it's an area that we're interested in, to see what mechanisms can we put in place to lessen that burden, so that entities can clean up and be investable. And so that we think we don't kill the chicken before, what is the saying? Exactly. We don't eat the chicken before it lays the egg. Yes. But we do recognize that constraint, and I think working together with the private sector is an important key to unlocking that potential.
And all these things we're going to sort out in August.
No, August is a specific regulation.
Just praying.
I was going to just mention that I think from experience,
Yes.
I can share with the lawyers,
Yes.
Even for the lawyers,
Yeah.
if you ever set up a fund without BDS and technical assistance facility, whether it's pre, whether it's post-investment, I've shared this with Josh and we agree, that fund is a non-starter. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. Right. Yeah, Josh.
Thanks, Edward. And we did have a long conversation. We took your advice into account, and really, the ARC does not just give capital. A large part, we restructure in two ways. There's the financial restructuring now, that is capital, is it going to be equity, is it going to be longer term debt, how does it get paid, all of that. But there is the operational restructuring. Now that's where we actually look critically at the company. What does this company really need? Does it need some board oversight? Who are the kind of people who are appropriate to the company? We can't get some of these big names that are on boards of banks to oversee a medium-sized growing to large SME that's operating in Chikubo. So it's got to be appropriate to the nature of the business. And then what are the kind of skills, the real skills that the company meets operationally? How is it managing its, how is it, what's the oversight of its financial management like? Does the system actually work? Is it exposed to fraud and the like? All of that. So we go into the in-depth, and that's a critical component of what we do. Indeed, we've set aside part of our pricing takes that into account. BDS is definitely the best because as it is now, it's really paid for through the pricing. In other words, ultimately by the beneficiary. But BDS and technical assistant, you know how it is when you're looking for anything free, you look at people like Hope. But on a serious note, it's something that we take into account, and that's why I said for lawyers, you need to ask your clients tough questions when they're in distress. Why are you in distress? Because if you ask those questions, then when you have a discussion with a distressed debt investor or any other financier, you're better able to guide the client when the investor makes certain demands regarding a hand in management or control of the financial management system of the company. Thanks.
When Joshua always talks along those lines, I normally ask him, so give me the authority. What is the law? What is the section of the act? And so on. It just speaks to the evolution, and I think the evolution of a lawyer and what we have to do in this place. We're using our legal knowledge to really deal with a subject matter of business turnaround. So that is why. So there's another question, another comment from Isaac Mpanga. Listening to lawyers is not what kills businesses. Businesses die because legal support is usually ignored in good times and only defaulted to in trouble, which I think is true. Yes, absolutely. They ignore the advice, but also sometimes they look for a very specific advice, isn't it? Someone who agrees with them. Let me beat him. Something like that. So I think we're both right. Again, Alex Resida comes back with a comment. Good touch on the role of a lawyer in the economy. In 2016, when Law Society celebrated 60 years, we ran a small article on that subject. Mr. Kampuri and Kavito have it on their phones, just shared it with them. The conversation needs more traction. Deus and Rita, okay, I'll share it with us so that we can get more traction. There's another comment. Knowing the stringent government considerations, what role do government-driven mergers and acquisitions, such as the ongoing government electromass arrangement, play as option of corporate rescue within the public-private partnership space? Fantastic question. Josh, I'll give this to you. Oh, you want me to go through it again? Sorry. This one is from Kunsa. Knowing the stringent government considerations, what role do government-driven mergers and acquisitions, such as the ongoing government electoral mass arrangement, play as options of corporate rescue within the public-private partnership space? Fantastic question.
Okay, thanks. I think that's actually a really good question.
Yes.
I think from my perspective now, really because I'm a private sector person, I think that government should know where its capabilities start and end. And I think that's probably the most important thing. Government should lay out the infrastructure that allows for corporate rescue. And we talked about it all. What are the kind of tax incentives that allow you to pull capital into into this company that's doing badly? Will the investors be able, because they've taken a risk, will they be able, for instance, to get reprieve on tax, at least for the initial years? One of the reasons our investors in the fund chose the vehicle that under the CIS Act, the open-ended investment companies, because of the tax incentives that it gives, which are very significant because it increases the returns to the investor and motivates it to be willing to put its money into into distressed assets, which are actually a relatively risky asset class. So the first thing is the environment, the infrastructure to allow these things to happen. And that's on policy, essentially. Policy and the laws, the adaptability of laws to specific environments. Secondly, government can do some business, and it's great that we have some government entities that have in the past played a huge role in economic development and continue to, the likes of UDC and UDB. But I think, and I think it's a bit unfair for Hope, because I think at times government pushes a lot of quote-unquote problems to UDC, even problems that don't quite fit within your mandate. And then you can't quite say no. So, and it puts...
Hope is going to protest.
Of course you'll protest. In fact, you should protest. But I think it puts organizations like UDC in a very difficult position, because rather than focus on their mandate, they have to now deal with certain problem issues that government wants them to deal with. But that also provides an opportunity to the private sector, and I'm glad, Hope we started a discussion with Rekindle, and I think we'll continue it, so that where the private sector can come in restructuring of companies, that can be done. Government plays its part, and I think government can also come in to de-risk some of these companies, not by putting up all the capital, but maybe by giving guarantees to a certain extent, that then motivates private capital to come in. It's a better way of also optimizing government funds. So there are things we can do, but it begins with government really assessing what is the role it can best play, and what should it not even consider playing? Where does it start and stop in terms of what it can actually do? So policy, first thing, and helping, just providing the right environment, even though it's de-risking to a certain extent. Thanks.
And there's a related question here. Maybe Joshua, you'll take it on, but I kind of would want to hear Edward's input here. There's against from Konsa. Konsa is asking tough questions. Isn't there a high possibility that government involvement in corporate debt restructuring would greatly affect the fiscal policy and possibly lead to a recession? What section is this one of the law?
No, I actually think the absolute opposite. What is it from a policy perspective? Why is restructuring a good thing to do? Restructuring preserves businesses that can actually continue to operate. Businesses that are suffering because they may have a good product, and actually usually they have a very good product. They have a good product, they have a market to take that product. But many times what they lack are either of two things or both. Appropriate management, for the product. The business many times has outgrown its owners and its management systems, or appropriate financing, and that's where the issue of patient capital comes in. So if you can have a mechanism that allows those businesses to deal with those restructurable issues, because those two things are actually restructurable. If you can deal with them and allow the business to continue to exist, then what happens? The business continues to employ its current employees and even grows because it has better skills, better technical capability. So it grows bigger and employs more, and then contributes more to the company, to the government in terms of tax, contributions, etc., etc. That makes for economic growth. A healthier company equals a larger economy. So I think that what Konsi said, the reverse is actually true.
Damali, I'd like to hear your perspective. Joshua has
I
not
have
cited
no
the law.
perspective. I'm going to give
Sorry.
to Edward, who
Okay,
seems
to
to have a
Edward.
perspective.
For you,
No, I agree with,
with
Josh.
Joshua, yes.
But I want us to appreciate that we don't have many examples and track record of business that have gone through proper restructurings, come out at the end of the tail end of the river, and survived to tell the story. Now, for some of those that we've been involved in and we've had this, private equity players like myself say private things, you keep them private. You don't get them in
It's
public
part of the
domain
unfortunate point,
because
isn't it?
there is no value for me to go and announce that, and the first person to knock on the door is URA. So I'm not going to do that. So what does that then mean? It comes back to what I mentioned in the beginning. The only thing I can add on Josh's words is that knowledge gap. And who are those guys who are going to add value by talking to these entrepreneurs? It's going to be you guys, the lawyers, who they confide in to keep your secrets. And that is going to be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, this time there's one more comment
Can
here.
I make
that
a
I think I
comment
should-
on that?
Oh, okay. Hope
I think
you.
just to pick up from where my co-panelists stopped, and Josh is right. I think if government simply sat back and did not play a role, and what do you mean by government playing a role or being involved? We have just acknowledged whether it is policy, whether it is actual involvement, providing financing, government is at the heart of it all. Everything. You just will not wish it away. You will want something done by government. And what government is now focusing on is, can we even provide financing to rescue these businesses? Many times, when we talk about corporate restructuring, I think we expect that when government gets involved today, this company will be the largest taxpayer tomorrow. Restructuring and turning around a business takes time. We must acknowledge that. And from where I sit, the businesses that we have been involved with, we see significant reduction in losses. And that is what we want to see, that there is some upward trajectory. And if we get to where we want to be, we should be able to come and tell you the success stories, really. Because one of the ways that UDC participates in this is through patient capital. And we are providing equity. That is our main form of financing, you see. Alongside that, we could give a shareholder loan. Okay, now shareholder loan because I'm a shareholder. Otherwise, if you come to me and you just want a loan, I am not for you. Because we have realized the need for patient capital for businesses to be turned around. So let us give the businesses an opportunity to turn around. And that won't happen overnight. But also, we are tracking the parameters of the turnaround, the turnaround milestones, so that we can be able to say, first of all, are we creating jobs? Are they creating jobs, or are they keeping the jobs? Are they exporting? Because we are, like I said, we have our investment principles. Are they contributing to our trade balance position, either through export or reducing on the import bill? We are able to see that. Okay, so again, it depends on what you're measuring. The private entities are probably measuring more of profit. Okay, yeah. Dividend are you declaring? And for me, I am saying, strategic differences, strategic interests. Thank you.
Fantastic. Oh, you too?
Sorry,
What a panel.
it just came up. So I feel like we are not short of problems in Uganda. We are not short of problems. So whoever can solve a problem should solve the problem. So if government is trying to solve the problem, let them solve the problem. It doesn't stop us private sector from solving the problem. But as we are all solving these problems, let's also do the things we must do. So regarding the business environment, that's government's core. It doesn't stop it from financing private sector, from doing all the things it's doing, but we can do both. Government can finance private sector through UTB, give all the incentives it must give, but then also we can solve the problem of the regulatory environment at the same time. So that also we, the private sector, can attract private equity, so that we can also add to the support that government is offering the private sector. Like I told you, please, before you leave, $224 million, and there's way more trillions of dollars available if only our business environment is correctly done. And it's not rocket science. It's actually very simple, the things we need to do. Capital Markets Authority, you're very responsive because you've been consulting the private sector. You know all the lists of things that we must do in terms of policy to correct our business environment so that it is attractive. So let's do that. As the government also works to finance the private sector, we are not short of problems. No one should be saying this one shouldn't do the problem. No, we are not short of problems. I engage with the private sector regularly. I engage with SMEs regularly. Their problems are immense. No one person can solve them. So whoever can solve. But then also let's deal with the business environment issue, those policy issues. They must be addressed as soon as possible because there is a lot of global money out there. It upsets me when I go to these global conferences and there's so much money, but you just know you can't attract any money to Uganda because of paper issues, policy issues that we have the power to change. We have the pen to say, okay, that's changed, now that's changed. So let's look globally also. Let's not just look at, Uganda as a, and then we say, yeah, but we're better, but we're doing better when we're comparing ourselves to ourselves. Let's compare ourselves to how much global money out there is, how much do we have? What business environment is next door? What business environment do I have? And that's it. So we need to look much more broader instead of only looking at our, small selves and then comparing ourselves to ourselves. And anyone who can solve a problem should solve a problem. We're not short of problems, actually. We have so many problems.
Wow, what an evening. We've done an extra hour. And I'm sure people would still be going and going and going. So I must close here, really. Let's continue with the discussion privately outside. Ian, ladies and gentlemen, out. Apparently there is tea, so there is an incentive for you. The other drinks you'll have to buy. I'm sorry. Law Society likes to keep us, as sober as judges. So thank you. And I think the quality of discussion here has been unprecedented. When I said, I always ask Joshua what section of the law, what law, is really to make the point that the discussion around insolvency matters is a bit different. It's always about economics and numbers. These things must make, we're already dealing with a distressed situation. Sometimes it's a countrywide distress we call a recession. And so at the private level for an individual, that is what now we know as distress in the manner that we know, or insolvent and so on. And so the discussion around these things should be always different. Whether we're in court, the judges might be pushing. Like in that case, a judge just says that you turn around the company. Really? So it is in the books that a receiver must turn around the company. A receiver doesn't do that. A receiver is a hunting dog, really. Is instructed by the secured lender to recover that money on behalf of the borrower. So you stand in the position of the borrower, and that's really what you do. The rest is up to the attitude of that secured lender. If he doesn't want his money immediately, if he's if he's kind and nice and wants to help in the restructure, that's the attitude the receiver will go with, as independently as he works. But you can't divorce yourself from what the interests of the secured lender are. So that Deus is not a good law, I can confirm. And I'm glad that you have also come to the same conclusion. I want to thank Rita and those who have put this together. Who? No, I just want to close. I'm the one my session. I want to thank you. You don't want me to thank you? Cannot thank you if you don't want. It is okay. I do not want to thank Rita. I do not intend to thank Rita at all. But I'll thank Deus. Thank you very much. And let me hand over the microphone to Rita to thank herself and close.
Thank you so much, Kabito. Thank you, Joshua, Damali, Edward, Hope, and Alison. It's been a wonderful afternoon. We set out to put you last, expecting this, and somehow God has answered our prayers. We see the online audience has also stayed on. It's a bit unprecedented. Usually by lunchtime we have half the team, but guys are on and they are firing questions. We also remember we can't take on anymore. People need to move on to other things. So please allow me to invite the VC for the insolvency cluster, Mr. Deus Mugabe, to close and see us off. Meanwhile, those of you who haven't registered, kindly, there are barcodes on your tables. Please register. Otherwise, you have not been here, at least as far as ULS is concerned. The moderator forgot his panel. Yeah. Thank you so much, our dear panel members.
Thank you very much. Number one, to everyone present online. I can't hear your claps, but please feel comfortable to clap for yourselves, for you've done very well. If you're here physically, you can clap twice over. I must say, this has been a wonderful symposium, courtesy of your presence. Let me start by thanking the Uganda Law Society for helping us put this together. Our dear President Bernard Oundo and the CEO, Mebo Mwesiga, they've been behind this lovely symposium. Our good head of professional development and litigation, Godwin Masiko. Thank you. He's been here physically since the start until now. I want to thank the food soldiers who have put this together from ULS and Mr. Kavito and Rita. Without Rita's input, I am sure we wouldn't be here, but she's done splendid, and we thank you, Rita. Let's clap for the food soldiers. Yes, I will thank our sponsors, LegalMark and H&G Advocates. Thank you for giving us your money. It has helped us make sure that the Insolvency and Business Rescue Symposium, strengthening Uganda's business resilience, leveraging business restructuring opportunities, was a success. I am sure it was a success, isn't it? But I cannot forget to thank the people who have made the panels as lovely as they were. For those of you whose panels are still here, we are very grateful. For those of you who have just left, we are very happy that you blessed us to attend our symposium and make the lovely contributions that you have made. We are so lucky to have the lot of you, lawyers, economists, non-lawyers. We are very glad. And it was a mixture. Rita intended to make sure that it's a blend of all of us so that we can drink from several cups of wisdom. And I think we are full. No one should be thirsty after this. If you are, don't worry. The Uganda Law Society will always arrange something like this. The quality of the discussion was splendid and of extremely high quality. I can add on other modifiers for the word very good. But we are very blessed. The presenters were likely above par. They were very good. So today we had, if I'm not mistaken, about 5 sessions. We started off with a lovely presentation about the economic landscape of Uganda and the East African community by Dr. Atkunda. And she highlighted huge things. The finding that insolvency incidents are usually a result of poor mismanagement and other issues related to corporate governance. And after that, we went into a panel session chaired by Mr. Lugaizi, dealing with bank insolvency in Uganda. We touched base on the intricacies of bank insolvency and why it stands in a special place, usually affected by systematic failure, and that, you know, when there is a failure in one bank, then all of us will be worried and want to keep our money under the mattresses. We then followed that up with a presentation by Mr. Kenneth Kampulira on the ethical dilemmas of an insolvency practitioner, where your common sense or what you think is even ethical is not really supported by the legal framework, and you have to choose. And I think his caution was, in many of these instances, seek the indulgence and direction of the court, even if the judge is to tell you that you could have done this using your own discretion. Make sure that the discretion is supported by the judicial mind, because many of the insolvency regimes have the judiciary at the back of them. We followed that with a presentation on alternative business turnaround mechanisms in Uganda, which I handled, where we talked a bit about reconstruction, mergers, amalgamation, and the legal regime that addresses compromises and schemes of arrangement, both for individuals and businesses that are run as companies. And then we had lastly this phenomenal panel moderated or chaired by Mr. Karamaji. I hope Karamaji works, like Karamagi. Absolutely. So, but I can use Kabito. So, and the discussion, I need not repeat, was very healthy, and we heard from the panelists who come across several sectors and at the intersection of the public finance and private sectors, and seeing how we can survive and all build on each other. And it is on that note that I wish to thank all of you again, presenters, participants online and physically here, the organizers, I repeat, Rita, Mr. Kavito, Godwin Masiko, and everyone at Uganda Law Society have done a splendid job. And I have been reminded to make sure I mention myself. That have been useful a bit. So we thank you from the cluster, the insolvency law cluster. We will keep organizing this kind of information. We will look into it to share the presentations that were delivered. These should come, I think we shall arrange that and share them. And unfortunately, they will not be broken down. I don't know where my colleague has gone into more lenient language, but on for those who want tailored advice, they will find it. There should be something to drink, as Mr. Gavito said. So feel free, except that it won't be alcoholic. He said alcohol you shall buy. But for evening tea, please don't leave it with us. We cannot drink it. Other than that, I pray that you all reach home safely. For those of you who are Christians and Muslims, in any format of religion, I pray for you that whichever God or Allah you believe in takes you home safely, and that we continue to develop the insolvency practice and the rescue culture in this country as a backbone of our insolvency practice. I thank you all.